What's going on, everybody? I am Wesley from Aconnectiontv, the network. And I'm here with a very good friend of mine, Scott Myers. You guys have seen his incredible opinion videos, or segments, in my opinion. But I definitely wanted to do an actual video with him, the both of us on screen, to talk about movies nowadays. And particularly sci-fi fantasy movies. You know, Wolverine was just released. We got Iron Man this year. We got Superman this year. The Avengers was an amazing movie last year. And I did a small video review for the Wolverine, and everyone who does not particularly know me yet, because they just tuned in because I was reviewing Wolverine, thought that I didn't know what I was talking about because I don't read the comic books and I'm not a fan, and you know, there's no way that Wolverine could be a terrible movie and go get a day job. You know, I got those kind of comments too. But to my surprise, my good friend here, who actually does know a lot about Marvel history and DC Comics and all of that, doesn't like Wolverine either. So I wanted to talk to him about the Wolverine movie and about a lot of the movies and what we need to expect, or what we want to expect from movies, and do you think that we're going to get it? Like, for example, what was your issue with Wolverine, and what did you like about Wolverine, if anything?
Wow, I had lots of issues. What I liked, and this is funny, I liked Hugh Jackman, and I know that seems simplistic, but I really like him, and I really like him as Wolverine. And it's funny because I was worried that he was kind of age out. I mean, how long can you really keep playing one character, especially a superhero who doesn't technically age?
Right.
But he was great. He was great. I mean, there's nothing that he brought to that movie that I did not love. So. Okay.
So what did you not like?
It's funny. Well, for one thing, it kept being promoted as this is the Wolverine you've been waiting for, and it's funny because I don't understand it. I did not hate the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie like other people seem to. I mean, I keep reading how bad that movie was, and I'm like, I did not hate it. I don't care for Will.i.am being cast, and I don't care for stunt casting of that nature. But the movie was fine. You know, I mean, it destroys comic book canon, but movies are going to do that. I mean, I never hold that against them. You know, so anyway, in terms of what I didn't like about this movie, the main thing for me was its predictability. I never, for a moment, and I'm serious, I never ever doubted that that old man was going to be the villain. I never doubted when I first saw the Silver Samurai armor that it was going to be that old man inside it, even though we all know, who read the comics, that Shingen Harada is the Silver Samurai. So when we introduce that character, we all go, oh, that's the Silver Samurai. And then they even made a little bit about, you know, oh, that particular samurai armor was from a samurai called the Silver Samurai, and of course we're all sitting there going, that is not the Silver Samurai armor. But I thought, oh, okay, they're making some traditional, you know, homage thing. But like I said, I never doubted it. Even when the old man died and they're taking the body away, I actually thought they're taking to put him inside. And we hadn't even seen the Silver Samurai armor, but I actually thought they were going to go and put him in the Silver Mane. And people who read Marvel Comics will know what I'm talking about. I thought for some reason we were going to get some weird thing where they were going to put Silvermane in there. But what I'm saying is, I never doubted that old man was going to end up in a robot body at any point.
Interesting. So is that the actual story between Wolverine and the samurai, the samurai armor thing?
No, so that's what it's. My comic knowledge was not brought to bear in any way. They went. That was a wholly original, non-comic led story. Okay. Because that's the thing. I think when they do that, because they know the audience, they know that we know everything.
Right.
You know, so they try to trip us up, even though that's stupid, because A, they can't trip us up, and B, all it does is make us unsatisfied. People who don't know the stories don't care, and people who do know the stories are annoyed. So what's the point of that?
So why do you think people were aggravated with me, in my opinion, in stating that obviously you don't read the comics, Because
a couple things. Because it is no secret that those Frank Miller Ronin stories in that Wolverine set were the greatest arc, in Wolverine's solo comic. The whole Wolverine in Japan, Wolverine as a Ronin, it's really popular amongst fans. That was a really great story arc. And so when you see that being brought to film, you're crazy excited about it. And you don't want to see it screwed with, even though, again, in movies you have to screw with it. I mean, we had years in the Wolverine comic for that to play out, and we get, an hour and a half, 2 hours, in a movie. So you want to see them pick the best bits, and in my opinion, they did not. And simply using the words Ronin, that's not the same thing. I mean, you can use all the jargon from the comic books, but that did not present the story for me. In fact, I mean, this is what I found. I guess that's what I found so. It's funny. I didn't think about it until we're talking about it right now. The reason I think the movie did not set well with me is because that entire mythology in the Wolverine comics and that entire historical reality of samurai and Ronin are all predicated on honor. And there was no honor evidenced by any character in that movie from start to finish. It was never about honor. It wasn't about family honor. It wasn't about personal honor. It wasn't about Wolverine's honor. There was, in fact, none of that story was driven by honor, which is in fact what made the comic book story so great. Because you can have honorable people be absolutely opposed and enemies because of the particular thing they are being honorable to. And I think that's the greatest thing. That was what made Shingen Harada such a great villain in the comic book Silver Samurai. Because we know he is not evil. He is simply driven by a different code. And he is simply being true to that code. In the same way that Wolverine is being true to his code. And Mariko is being true to her family honor. None of that came out in the movie, to me. None of it. It had the Japanese trappings, but none of the meat. So, anyway, sorry, I thought of that literally right now. There's been something nagging at me, and I think that's exactly what it is.
I've never been particularly a fan of the solo X-Men movies because they don't seem to give me what any of like Thor and Captain America and Iron Man, what they've given me. And I can't really, I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem to work out that way. So when I knew that the next Wolverine movie was coming out, I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, but I'm not going to go in expecting too much because I haven't been really getting enough from any of the X-Men movies, period. And a lot of people were mad because they said that X2 was the best and they really loved X2 and this and that, and then First Class was amazing and so forth and so on. But those movies were not amazing. Like, the only amazing superhero movie to me was The Avengers. Like, that movie was amazing. It had so many different things that you can like in that movie, and it was just fluid, and no one was greater than the next. Like, everyone had an equal playing field in the movie, I feel. And so, like, when I see a movie like that, and then you give me a movie like First Class, it's just, you can't compare the two, but I love The Avengers over First Class. And I just want more movies to shine like The Avengers did.
I see what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, but I disagree with your conclusion. Avengers was the greatest movie, truly, and everything you said is spot on. Because that's what impressed me the most, is that you can have an ensemble movie like that where everybody shined. I mean, Avengers is the best Iron Man movie. It is the best Hulk movie. It is the best Captain America movie, even over all their own movies. And that is not easy to do. That is not easy to do at all. So I agree, everything about Avengers, awesome. However, I don't want every movie to be the Avengers. It's too much. For one thing, the reason I hated Superman was because it was trying to be all big and flashy like Avengers, and not the character story I needed it to be. Superman is not just like the Avengers. I mean, and I used to say that. You know, I mean, Marvel's it's about Flash, and that's why all those movies that are actually done by Marvel Productions, their own production team, they get the tone better than the X-Men movies that are all made by Sony. You know, because Sony bought up those rights before there was a Marvel studio. So that's why they have those characters. I firmly believe that Marvel would do a much better job making X-Men films than Sony does. Because they just missed the mark. That's the reason I don't really care for the Wolverine movies, because I'm with you. Wolverine works to me as part of the team. Because Wolverine is a classic anti-hero, and what makes him interesting is when he is forced to work with actual heroes and function in that group. That's the conflict that makes reading the X-Men enjoyable, at least back in the day. But that to me is why I don't think Wolverine is very successful in his solo films, because the conflict isn't there. He's not just a superhero. He's never just been a superhero. That's the whole point. I mean, he's a trained government assassin who bridles under that function, and that's conflict, especially when you throw him in a group of kids, which, you know, the X-Men were always just basically superpowered college kids. And here's this experienced old man killer, you know, whose solution to every problem is kill it.
Yeah.
You know, well, that makes for good team stories,
right?
Which have yet to be evidenced, in my opinion, in the X-Men films. And don't get me wrong, I like the X-Men movies. I actually do.
All three of them?
I like them all in certain ways. I hated the last one. Well, see, then I use the word like hate. I love them all, but I hated the last one. I didn't like the last one as much for a variety of reasons. It seemed quick and sloppy and absolutely pissed all over the source material, which is awesome source material. You know, so I mean, to take, you know, I'm not going to get into it. The bottom line is in the same way that I was never that much of a fan of the Wolverine comic book. I mean, I've read X-Men since there's been X-Men. I love X-Men. Even the low points, you know, I've read some pretty crappy X-Men periods. But I've never been a big fan of Wolverine's standalone comic, because what makes Wolverine best for me is the way he interacts with the X-Men, not just villains. So
okay. So out of all of the X-Men movies, which one do you like the most, including First Class? So X-Men 1, X-Men X2 United, Last Stand, I think was the third one, and then First Class.
I probably like the first one the most out of those three, although there were things I really liked in X2. I loved Nightcrawler in X2, and I'm really disappointed that Alan Cumming didn't want to reprise that role in Days of Future Past coming up. I'm really disappointed in that. I understand why he didn't want to do it, but I'm very disappointed.
Why didn't he want to do it?
The makeup's too hard. He just didn't want to. I mean, it was so much trouble for him, and I could understand not wanting to sit into 14 hours of makeup a day.
Oh wow!
But at the same time, God bless it. I mean, films are forever, and to be able to contribute to and be a part of something like that will last forever. You know, it's like having pharaohs going, building pyramids is too hard. I don't really want to be remembered forever. You know, and that to me is my thing with Alan Cumming. It's, you know, you're so awesome as Nightcrawler. I never thought that would be a character you could pull off on film. Actually, when I read the comics, you know, I never thought you could actually pull off in the way that, frankly, I hated the Beast. And, you know, even though I love Kelsey Grammer, and I love what he did with it, but I hated the look of him. It was horrible. Oh, it was horrible. I was so glad to get Beast in a movie, and that's what I got, was that weird blue monkey suit, you know, and poor Nicholas Hoult in First Class has to inherit that blue monkey suit. I felt terrible for him. I really did, both of them. But I thought Nightcrawler was like that. I thought you could never pull him off. And yet here comes Alan Cumming, and I was like, oh, I want to see more of him.
Right.
You know, and so I'm disappointed that I'm not going to get to see more of him. But anyway, ultimately, I think the first one. I liked the story. There were so many crazy, lame-ass plot holes. But I think when you've waited a lifetime to see an X-Men movie, and you actually get a good one, your love for that is actually always, it's, you know, it sounds all, it's never as good as the first time kind of thing, you know, and so it really stuck with me. Plus, it does stick with me. I could tell you point by point. I could lay out the plot of that first movie. I have a hard time telling you all the plot points of X-Men United. I can tell you the plot points of X3 because the thing was so simplistic and boring. I can't tell you what happened in First Class at all. Cuban Missile Crisis was in there somewhere.
Right.
No, but I can't even tell you really what the plot was. And so it didn't stick with me at all.
I feel the same way about movies, because if I can't remember certain things in the movie, then it just didn't captivate me enough. How great could it have been if I can't tell you about it? Right, exactly. Great movies. I can probably sit down and tell you every shot in Avengers. Right. You know. Right. And then this happened. And then this happened. Right. You know. And all I can tell you about First Class is they were in it. But even that I just found confusing, because I was like, why were all those people in it? I mean, and I understand that they're going to try to fix a lot of these continuity glitches with Days of Future Past, but there's so many promises to Days of Future Past. It's ridiculous. But
that's it. I don't see how they're going to be able to live up to it.
I just don't understand. Like, even the casting seems a bit off. Like the guy that's playing Bishop, I'm just like,
oh, so you know more than I do. I don't know who's playing Bishop.
I just can't see it, and I can't remember his name. Okay. But I just can't see it. So my next question is, between the three movies that were released this year, Superman, Iron Man, and Wolverine, which is your favorite and why?
I guess it would have to be Iron Man 3. And it's funny, because that's a good example of, I never thought you could bring that extremis storyline to film. That was a complex, I mean, even when I was reading Iron Man, and when they went into that, I was like, where are they going with this? I mean, this is radically changing the Iron Man I know and love and grew up with. And yet they did it. I mean, I completely bought it. I was kind of disappointed when they undid it, because I was like, you know, really? You're not gonna, it's like when you have this great creation, but you know that the writer who invented it is the only person who can actually handle the material. So the next writer comes along and kind of has to undo it because he can't cope with it, you know? And you see that in comics all the time. Right. But, you know, but I was very surprised. For one thing, I go out of my way to not know what's going to happen in these movies before I see them. Now, in Days of Future Past, I mean, obviously I know that storyline. But the Avengers story was completely original, so I couldn't have any idea what was going to happen. Well, Iron Man 3 was a lot like that, you know, where I didn't know what was going to happen ahead of time. I didn't know what the movie was about at all. And so when I watched it and I saw it, I was like, huh! You know, Extremis, Mandarin, ah, you know, and I knew about Mandarin, but of course that was the joke, because Mandarin in the movie and in real life was just a red herring, you know, and so it really was an Extremis plot line, and it was very impressive. I thought they made bold choices. I didn't care for the climax very much, because you know, they don't get this in Hollywood, and it's sequel-itis, where really sequels are always, we need to make the first movie but with more, you know, and nobody's ever heard that expression, less is more. So I got to the point where, I'm sorry, 35 Iron Man suits flying around, I mean, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just assumed that they were going to kick ass and blah. But, I mean, I'm kind of hoping, and I don't know what's in store for, you know, Iron Man 4 or whatever, but when you do something really sloppy, like all those suits and whatnot, I like to think that some other good writer will come along and clean up sloppy, because you can take sloppy and make it brilliant. And to me, that all leads up, I don't know how familiar you are with Iron Man comics, but people who watch this, you know, Iron Man comics will know when I talk about armor wars. So to me, all this Iron Man armor and debris that's all over that freaking harbor lays all the groundwork for a great Armor Wars movie, in my opinion, where Armor Wars was an arc where basically the government and villains and people just came up, they acquired bits of Iron Man technology and of course used it for bad purposes. And so Tony Stark feels this moral obligation to remove his technology from these people's hands. And I thought it made for interesting stories, and I think it would make for a really interesting movie because everybody's your enemy. The bad guys who are employing your armor are the enemy, but the government is your enemy. I mean, you know, it's so, I don't know, I think that would be interesting, and it would help explain the incredibly reckless behavior of this movie's finale. But like I said, I like that better because it was just a more enjoyable story. You know, I hated Superman for many reasons, many reasons. And the Wolverine was fine. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate the Wolverine.
Okay.
It just was disappointing, is all. So,
okay. So what are your hopes for Days of Future Past?
Oh my God. All I ever want is to be entertained and not be annoyed. Violations of internal movie logic really piss me off because I'm one of those people, I will suspend my disbelief. I will just ride along with any premise you put out there happily. But if you don't follow your own premise, I get pissed, you know, because I'm buying into the crap you're selling, but then you yourself are not buying into it when you distort it.
Right.
It's like Pacific Rim, you know, I mean. You
didn't like Pacific Rim?
I did like Pacific Rim, except for parts that really pissed me off. Okay, let me call that. There are lots of things I didn't like about Pacific Rim. And that gets me mad, because when you have giant robots fighting giant monsters, how can you go wrong? Well, you can. Watch Pacific Rim. You know.
I loved Pacific Rim. I did. But go ahead.
No, I was just, your question was in terms of Iron Man 3, the Wolverine, and Superman. So, Iron Man 3.
Well, okay, but your expectations for...
Oh, Days of Future Past. Yeah. I'm excited because Bryan Singer is coming back to direct it. And
he did which one?
He did the first two, which I thought were much better than the third.
Yes, okay.
And so, I mean, directorially even. I think he has a better handle on the X-Men. It's this great mistake people make where, like they did this with the last Star Trek Next Generation movie, where we're going to break out and we're going to get somebody to come in here who's not a fan, you know, and I'm like, well, but they're going to make a great movie. Well, no, they're not. You can't make especially a comic book movie, if you don't love these characters, you cannot do right by them. You just can't, because you don't get it. No, but that's why Avengers worked so well, because Joss Whedon clearly loves the Avengers. And to me, Bryan Singer loves the X-Men. Clearly, he loves that material. So what I'm hoping is, I'm already disappointed because I've already read like the synopsis, and they're sending Wolverine back in time. I'm like, well, but they're not, because we all know it's Kitty Pryde who gets sent back.
Yes.
And you know, and why? You don't trust Oscar-nominated Ellen Page to carry off a time travel story? But it's always got to be about Wolverine, you know. And I'm like, you know, God damn it. So I'm already disappointed in that. But I'm just hoping that they'll be respectful of not the material, because I'm not married to the material, but I do insist you be respectful of the audience, because you're making this movie for people who love these characters, and when you fuck with them, you're spitting on the people whose money you want to collect, and that pisses me off. So I don't know. So just do the best you can, you know, for people who really love movies and these characters.
Right. I think when you look at a live action superhero film, well, for me, what I want to see is great acting, great casting, because I'm sorry,
but X-Men's never been well cast.
And that's why I'm saying.
You can't get away
that's
from
what
it.
I'm saying.
You
I'm
can't get away from
because-
Halle Berry.
Right, because I was gonna say that. I'm just, the casting is terrible.
And I love Halle Berry, but she sucks
not-
ass as Storm.
She's not Storm.
And she was pregnant while shooting this, so no fights, no flying. It's like Storm, already useless in the other movies, is more useless in this.
That's why I'm just like, about it. But, you know, you have characters like Bishop, you have Kitty Pryde, and all those characters, and I'm like, in the comics, they are awesome. In the animations, they are awesome. So I'm curious as to see, like, what they're going to do with them live action post. And I keep referencing Avengers because Avengers just got it right in the sense of the action and the fluidity of how it happens and how it's visually stimulating. Like nowadays, the technology to make a film is just mind-boggling. So it's like when you have an action sequence in a superhero film, you need to be like, wow, that was awesome. Not like, oh, okay, well.
But to me, X-Men should be about action sequences. That's the thing. X-Men is not the Avengers. They're different comic books.
Right.
People who read Avengers and like Avengers don't necessarily read and like X-Men.
That's true.
To me, the tone of those comics has always been different.
Yes, you're right.
And in fact, I would be very disappointed because that's one of the things I don't like about the X-Men movies. X-Men have always been an analogy for the oppressed, you know, for minorities or gays or whatever. And that is not in any of these movies. They are not just a team of superheroes and I've never gotten that in any of the movies. I've never gotten the fear and the loathing and the ostracism that to me defines the X-Men. And maybe that's why I'm not very keen on those movies.
Okay, so
that's the meat. The Avengers are the accepted love heroes. The X-Men are the people who are saving the world every bit as much or more than the Avengers, and people hate them for it. And I never get that.
Gotcha. So, point duly noted. I want you guys to write your comments below the video, share this video, like this video, and definitely enlighten us on a few things on your opinions based on these movies that we've talked about, and what do you expect from X-Men Days of Future Past. I think it's going to make for another good conversational piece when the movie actually does shed some light to the world. But thank you for watching, and until next time.
Questions. Why you asking questions? Only thing you need to be like, bam! Who the hell is she? Who the hell? Ooh! 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 Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jen would have got hot. Jen